everyone, hi, welcome back to my channel. So what are we doing today? Today I am going to attempt to predict the shortlist for the Women's Prize for Fiction in 2022. Now I've actually been following this prize this year, not really sure what inspired it, I just decided to follow this prize. And yeah, it's been a lot of fun. So my first video that I did, I attempted to predict the long list for the Women's Prize for Fiction 2022. Spoiler alert, it didn't go so well. Me following this long list, what does that mean? That means that I am keeping my eyes peeled for reviews, especially reviews from other booktubers in the community that I'm a part of. And then sometimes I would watch those reviews and then also have to do like the calculation, plus, minus, subtract, the whole, multiply, and then divide it, because my reading taste is not the same as those of you on BookTube. So sometimes I would see a review and I'm like, okay, that reviewer really loved the book. And then I have to do like the little boop, 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 boop. Would I like that book? And sometimes my answer would be like, no, actually, I don't think I would like the book. And then sometimes in my calculation, boop, 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 I would be like, oh yeah, that does sound like a book for me. So I've been following booktuber reviews. I've been looking at best and worst of lists, especially in 2021, to get some idea if these books popped up on those. And I've been reading some of the books. I find it tremendously powerful to not just say, I'm gonna read every Women's Prize book list that I can find in my library. I'm gonna read every Women's Prize for Fiction long list that I can get my hands on. To me, that is not super powerful. I actually find it really powerful to say, I'm gonna read 3 and I'm gonna choose the 3 that are most aligned, most suited to my taste, and those are the ones that I'm gonna devour. And for whatever reason, I find that gives me back my power as a reader, that makes me feel less stressed out, that makes me feel like I have some control over the list. Now maybe that says something about my personality, but it also makes me feel like I am not being dictated to what I should be reading and what I ought to read for the next couple of months. And so I really take a lot of pride and joy in only picking the books that I want to read. And so for me, this is definitely like my kind of video, because I figured out what books might work for me and what books might not, based on my research since the long list has been announced. So in complete and utter classic Shelley fashion, the 16 books that made it to the long list have been broken into categories. And so here are my categories. I have NSI, which means not super interested. I have OTR, which means open to reading. I have no thank you, which means I really don't want to read the book, even if the book is shortlisted or perhaps even won. I don't know if I would, at this point, read that book because of the negative reviews that I've heard from people that I trust. Then I have the books that I've read, and then I have the final category are books that I plan on reading. I either own the book or have a very, very strong interest in reading it. And then at the end, I will do an official predictions for the long list of the Women's Prize for Fiction. The short list. I'll do a predictions for the short list, the 6 books that are going to be announced on April 27th. And let's just jump right in. Before we actually jump right in, if this is your first time to my channel, then hi, I'm Shelley. I love books and reading. I love following the market. I like following book prizes, new releases, and keeping my eyes peeled as to what's going on in the literary world. And one way that I do that is by keeping up with prizes, like the Women's Prize for Fiction. If any of this is your jam, I would really encourage you to subscribe and stick around. I would love to have you. No pressure, of course. And now, let's actually get into the meat of this video. Okay, so we're starting off with the books that I am not super interested in. So my NSI. I have 4 books in this category. One book I did pick up and then I kind of softly and gently DNF'd it. But let's start at the top. The first book is Catherine, oh man, I heard someone actually say her name right and now I'm not gonna say it right. So Catherine, I know that I'm gonna say Chidgey, but that's not right. I can't remember. I know my pronunciation is not right, but Catherine Chidgey's, that's what I'm gonna go with. Remote Sympathy. So Remote Sympathy, from what I know about this book, this is a book set in World War II. It's a historical fiction novel, and it has the vibes of Boy in the Striped Pajamas, at least from the blurb. And the idea is that there is someone in town who's living really close to a concentration camp, but she's ignorant as to what's going on in the concentration camp as she is living her life, yet her life is so close to the terrors and horrors of that setting. I don't want to read this because I have read quite a bit of World War II books, and I'm just really not interested in this perspective. And for me at this point in the game, that's all I need to say I'm not super interested in it. The next two books I actually don't want to read because the marketing is really, really not doing it for me. And I'm sorry, I have to talk about it because the marketing really does play into whether, one, a consumer like me is going to be interested in even picking up the book. And I know we shouldn't judge a book by its cover, but overall that does play into our experience of reading the book and our perceptions of the book, and then also our enjoyment of the book. So here are two books where the marketing is just too kind of too light looking. It's just too like popcorn, bubblegum, pop read, beach read, and that's really like not my deal. I hardly ever read anything like beach reads or vacation reads. That's typically not me. So the two books are Careless by Kirsty Capes. So Careless by Kirsty Capes. And I know that the subject matter of the book is not light and that it is supposed to be dealing with heavier things. I believe it's a young girl who's pregnant and she's also living in the foster care system from my knowledge. And I know that those are heavy topics, but for whatever reason, the marketing of the cover is just really not doing it for me, and it's really like putting me off to wanting to pick up the book. The other book that is very like bright and colorful and cute, but overall it gives me the vibes of like beach read, and it's making me go, ooh, no. That is Flamingo by Rachel Elliott. I actually don't know very much about this novel, and I haven't heard it reviewed all that often, but if we're kind of judging a book by its cover, these two are not doing it for me. The final book that is my NSI, so not super interested in, is the final revival of Opal and Nev by Donnie Walton. So I did start this, and the thing that I thought was really interesting and that really made the book stand out in some way is that this book is told as if it is a documentary, and that there are these kind of pieces of interviews and documents and little clips that are all kind of put together in order to tell the story of Opal and Nev, who were a fictional singing duo in the 70s. And I really liked this idea of the structure. It's very much like The Seven Lives of Evelyn Hugo and Daisy Jones and the Six. I haven't read either of those, probably because though I think the format of this is, neat, like it's a neat format. I have seen it before. I read Where'd You Go, Bernadette, which is told mostly through documents. And I like that book just fine. But when I see something like this, like where it's told, a story is told through letters, through documents, through sort of fake documents, or interviews even, I think it's like, oh, that's a neat little trick. But I really have to wait for the story to grab me, and the story just didn't grab me. So I did like a soft DNF, and I said, well, maybe if you progress, little book, Opal and Nev, maybe if you make it to the shortlist, maybe then I'll pick you up. But until that happens, I'm kind of like, I'll maybe one day. All right, so my next category is OTR, open to reading. And with this category, it means that I've seen these books like kind of reviewed, and kind of like reviewed pretty okay, but I haven't heard a lot of buzz about them. So I'm feeling really neutral, and I'm waiting for the shortlist to be announced in order to see if these books like pique my interest even more. Interestingly, the three of the books are kind of magical realist in a way. Those three books are Creatures of Passage by Maroa Yajinde, Salt Lick by Lulu Allison. Interestingly, when I was reacting to the Women's Prize for Fiction long list, Salt Lick was what excited me quite a bit, because there was like this chorus of this Greek chorus of cows, feral cows, who get a narration bit in the story. And I was like, yes, I want to hear cows telling me their opinion about us, and that sounds really interesting. But then when I actually like kind of came down to the nitty-gritty, I wasn't sure if I wanted to sink 450 pages worth of time into this book that I haven't really heard a lot about, except for the fact that it made the long list. And so I was kind of waiting to see the public's reaction, and I still haven't heard a lot. Britta Bowler, last I checked with her, she mentioned that this was pretty good, but she wasn't done reading it by the time I'm making this video. She wasn't done reading Salt Lick. But I felt comforted that she said the book was pretty good and that it was going well, and Lulu Allison was a good writer. So I felt comforted by that, but still not enough for me to pick it up. So if it makes the short list, then we'll really be cooking with gas, all right? The last magical realist book is Build Your Body Around My House by Violet Cooper-Smith. I had thought about reading this, but then never quite got to it. This is another sort of dual timeline historical fiction book. It sounds interesting, but I just, I'm just not sure, all right? I'm just not sure. If you've read any of these and have really good reviews for them, can you please let me know? I would find that very helpful. Okay, and then my last open to reading, again, sort of wondering how it's gonna shake out with the long list and the short list, and that is The Bread the Devil Knead by Lisa Allen-Agostini. Let me try that again. So The Bread the Devil Knead by Lisa Allen-Agostini. I heard this is really good in that it is written in dialect, but the dialect is very readable. I heard that the story is strong, that there is like an outward publicly facing sort of strong lady, and yet in her personal life, she's not as strong as she may present to the public. That's kind of the vibe that I'm getting. I'm kind of just waiting and seeing, so I'm waiting and seeing, all right? I should have just called the category wait and see. Okay, so now we're getting to like the good stuff. So there are two books that I want to read regardless of the way the shortlist shakes out. And the first one, it's because I own it and I just think it sounds great. And that is Ruth Ozeki's The Book of Form and Emptiness. I already have this. This is a magical realist book about a young boy who starts to hear his items talking to him. And it's about the way that we process grief and mental illness, and I've just heard wonderful things about it. And so this is one that I'm definitely planning on reading, like regardless of the results. And then the other book that I'm really want to read, but I don't have it in my possession right now, but it is Louise Erdrich's The Sentence. The Sentence has been getting such great reviews, like up, down, and all around. I feel like everybody has given it a solid review, even if they haven't loved the book. Like most people are saying that this is a pretty darn good book. And of course, Louise Erdrich, she won the Pulitzer Prize last year, so I feel like she might be on the docket to win the Women's Prize because, yeah, I mean, she's having a moment, y'all. And The Sentence is being very widely received positively. It's being positively widely received. Is that right? It's being widely received very positively. So this is set in, I forget, it's set in the US and it's set in a bookstore. And like the owner of the bookstore is named Louise, just like Louise Erdrich, the author, who also owns a bookstore or works at a bookstore. And there is like an annoying customer who's now a ghost haunting the bookstore. And it just sounds good. It sounds magical and light and fun and solid, like a solid read. And that's what I'm looking for, y'all. Okay, so there are 3 books that I have read, and that would be Elif Shafak's The Island of Missing Trees. I read this basically when the long list was announced. I read it kind of right back at the beginning several weeks ago. I thought this was okay, but now this book is not fading well in my memory. Let me tell you that for sure. It seems that certain readers tend to really like it, but those readers also really enjoy maybe young adult fiction. I don't know. I'm not really sure where the break is. But I thought The Island of Missing Trees, the more that I thought about it, the more I realized, and I'm going to quote Bob the Bookerer, okay? I'm going to leave his link down below, his review linked down below. I'm going to leave my review linked down below. But he said that The Island of Missing Trees very much had this like paint by numbers quality to it with the plot. Like, oh, this is going to happen, and then this happens, and then this happens. And yeah, the more I think about it, the more I realize that there wasn't a big element of surprise in the book, and that you could really just sort of plot the book out pretty easily. And there was also this, on the very last page, I'm not going to give it away, but there is a twist. And I was like, that twist really bothered me. It really bothers me because it didn't need to be there. And I felt like Shafak just threw it in just because, like, it wasn't a thoughtful connection between the two storylines. And I was like, why? And the more I think about it, the more it really ticks me off that, like, I read this book and that she just really, like, that was just such a cheap shot, okay? I didn't like it, okay? I didn't like it. I'm feeling very alone in my feelings where I read a book and I was feeling kind of neutral about it. And then now, as time has passed, it is like rotting in my memory. Like, I'm looking at that book and as I'm thinking about it, I'm like, ooh, it is just falling apart right in front of me. And in my memory, it's just getting like worse and worse and worse. So anyways, I would like to know, has that happened to you in your reading experience? Have you read a book and then you're like, oh, now that time has passed, I really didn't like that book? Because that's what's happening with The Island of Missing Trees by Elif Shafak. Okay, then I read Great Circle by Maggie Shipstead, and this book worked for me on a whole bunch of different levels. It is a historical fiction novel following a young wannabe pilot named Miriam Graves, and it is following basically her storyline, her whole life, starting with her parents and how she came to be in this world, on this earth, and it follows her just all the way through her life. But there is definitely a focus on her coming of age and through her 20s, that it's great. And then there is the modern timeline. Well, you know, most of the book worked for me. Oh, Hadley. I just didn't like you. I didn't like Hadley, the actress in the modern timeline, and it really didn't work for me. But that's okay, because the majority of the book is in this sort of historical fiction setting that was really wonderful. I devoured the book. I thought I read it very quickly. I thought it was very consumable, very enjoyable, and in that way, I really enjoyed it. But then again, as I'm sort of looking back, and I'm like, okay, so should this win a prize? Is this a prize-winning book? I'm like, maybe. It was good, but it wasn't great, right? Okay, so the last book that I'm going to talk about that I have read is This One Sky Day, or Poppy Show by Leon Russ. This is a magical realist book, definitely more on the magical side than the realist side, and I'm just going to briefly describe the world and then what worked for me. Okay, so Leon Russ was able to create this world that felt very magical, so every person living on this archipelago of islands on Poppy Show, they all have a little something, so a little bit of magic in them. And, well, then some people don't have magic, but then that's kind of strange, and they're trying to figure out how to deal with that. And the book had a lot to do with our internal lives, basically, and the way that we perceive ourselves, the way that we are talented in our own way, but the way that we foster our talent and where we put our energy and where we put our ideas. There was really wonderful and hilarious and interesting commentary about male-female relationships, and then also there was like another conversation about the way females relate to their own body, and that was really interesting. There's this whole thing where pom-poms fall out. If you know, you know. And for me, I was kind of like, what? I've just never had a book that decided to take that route, and that ended up being a really interesting element for me. The plot was strong, the characters were strong. The only thing that I think could potentially push this book back from making the shortlist or even being the winner is because the world is so weird. It's so weird. Like, it's weird in that, like, I was charmed by it. I don't know. I'm not sure if everybody will love the world and what Leon Russ did with it. It's just such a weird world, but I really enjoyed being in it. I really enjoyed being in the world of Poppy Show. And there's also a bit of lightness to it. It's not dystopian. It doesn't cross this line where it's like dark weird, like dark magic bubbling underneath the surface that someone's gonna come out and like rip throats out and eyeballs are coming popping everywhere or something. It's not like that. It's just weird as in like unconventional, unusual. It's one of the most unusual worlds that I've ever encountered, and if you've read it, I'd be really interested in what you thought about the world and like how you took it. Now we've come to the part of this video where I'm telling you the 3 books that I will probably never read because they received such bad reviews. I mean, they received such scathing reviews from people that I absolutely trust. And when I see some of my, my favorite booktubers, people that I know are well-read and really can like hone in on a book, on what's good and what's not good, and when they say a book is real bad, I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna, I'm skipping it. Like, why would I waste my time? I'm not gonna say, oh, it's real bad. I'm just gonna try it out and see if I think it's really bad. No, I'm just gonna say, I'll take your word for it. It's horrible. Okay, so the first one was The Paper Palace by Miranda Cowley Heller. Britta Bowler, this is one of the last times I'm gonna mention, well, I'm gonna mention her one more time after this, but she said that this book was just not good. The characters were all broken and there was no reason to break all of the characters except to say that all of your characters are somehow deep because they're broken. And the way that she explained that, I was like, yeah, I don't want to read just about like people's brokenness in order to like sort of move the plot forward. I would hope that it had a bit more craft than that. And so that is a hard pass for me. I was already not super interested in the book, and then I was like, no, thank you. The next one is The Exhibitionist by Charlotte Mendelson. Again, last time I'm going to mention Britta Bowler for certain. She said that this book was like Meg Wolitzer's The Wife, which I actually have. So I haven't read this, Meg Wolitzer's The Wife, and Britta Bowler made it sound like Meg Wolitzer did exactly what Charlotte Mendelson was trying to do, but she did it better. And so I'd rather read the better version of the book, especially if they're dealing with the same concept. It's supposed to be the patriarch of the family is the one who is an artist and getting a lot of recognition, and yet his wife, who is maybe a lesser known figure in their social circle, also has probably the true art in the family, but she's not recognized for it because she is the wife. That's my understanding of the book, and again, I'm excited to get to Meg Wolitzer, so I was like, yeah, I'll definitely pass on Charlotte Mendelson. Okay, the last one I kind of figured out right away because, again, I looked at best and worst of lists in 2021, and this book made it on Steve Donahue, who is our resident book critic here on BookTube. It made it on his worst of list, worst of fiction in 2021. And so I was like, yeah, I'm not, if Steve says that this book is bad, then I'm not gonna pick it up. And that is Sorrow and Bliss by Meg Mason. I forget why he said it's bad, but I was like, just say that it's bad. I'm looking for DNFs, like I'm looking for, not DNFs, I'm looking for reasons not to pick up a book. And so that was enough for me. And so I was like, yeah, I'll definitely pass on Sorrow and Bliss. And I think even if these 3 books did make it to the shortlist, and if one of them did win, I really don't think that I will, I don't think that I'll pick it up. I just don't think it's worth my time based on who's read it and reviewed it. So I don't know, do you agree with my choices and my trust in other reviewers? I'd be curious to know. Okay, now to the moment that you've all been waiting for. So here are my predictions for the shortlist for the Women's Prize for Fiction in 2022. Okay, so my first 2 books, it's because they are being received so well by quite a few different readers that makes me think that they're going to move on, that they've done their job well. This is a solid book. It's a good read by a great author. And those 2 books are The Sentence by Louise Erdrich and the Book of Form and Emptiness. I have it right here. The Book of Form and Emptiness by Ruth Ozeki. So I think those 2 books will definitely make it to the short list. I think that This One Sky Day, or Pulpisho by Leon Ross, though I think it's weird enough to stand out, but it works well enough to be remembered. And so that's why I think it'll move on. It might be too weird though, so I could see it also not moving on, but she's going to my short list, all right? My 4th pick is going to be the final revival of Opal and Nev. By Donnie Walton. The reason why I'm picking this is because structurally it's so different than the other books on the list that I know of. And I think that that could make the book stand out. It's also talking about race relations, and you know, it has just kind of a whole different vibe to it, and I think that could make the book stand out just enough to make it to the short list. Okay, so my fifth pick is going to be Great Circle by Maggie Shipstead. I think that this is a really solid historical fiction book, and I think that it's done well enough that I think well enough to move on to the short list. And then my last pick is really just going to be kind of a stab in the dark. And so I'm just going to say Build Your House Around My Body by Violet Cooper Smith. I think that the dual narrative, the historical fiction, I think that it has the elements to do well. But again, that's kind of like my wild card. I really don't know. It could have been any of the other books that are on my I'm curious about to read list. Okay, so I've done it. The task is done. I have predicted. Now we just have to wait for April 27th to come around to see how well I did. And yeah, let me know what you think will make it on the short list for the Women's Prize for Fiction in 2022. That would be really interesting to know. But overall, thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for watching. Are you looking forward to the big day? Or are you one of those people that's like, to heck with all prizes? You know, I want to know. I want to know. Okay, that's it for me. So thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you all in my next one. Bye, guys.